wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming.
Taking the good with the ups and downs. I wanna see how the world turns round. Let's go adventure in the deep blue sea. Home is with you wherever that may be. Home is with you wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming.
Taking the good with the ups and downs. I wanna see how the world turns round. Let's go adventure in the deep blue sea. Home is with you wherever that may be. Home is with you wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming.
home is with you wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming.
Okay. Thank you, and good morning to our council meeting for the 11th of December, our ordinary council meeting. Thank you, everyone, councillors and staff, for attending this morning. Firstly, I'd like to begin with acknowledgement to country and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today, the Darumbal people, and pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, extending that respect to our neighbouring Aboriginal peoples within our local government area, the Gungaloo Nation people, the Barada, Cabelbarra and Yetamarala people. Also acknowledging the Torres Strait Islander peoples whose lands are in the Torres Straits but who live and work on Aboriginal land. Councillor, I'd ask you to stand up for our opening prayer being delivered today by the Reverend David Alley from the Rockhampton Churches Together. Welcome, David.
These last 4 years, which has served this city so well. We pray that as this term winds up, that you bless these councillors, give them wisdom in making decisions on behalf of us all. We pray for the ongoing blessing and favour of God upon the city of Rockhampton and the Rockhampton region. We pray for economic well-being, safety, protection for families and children, especially during the holidays when so many people are travelling, for low crime and for general health and happiness for the people in our region. We also pray that as elections come up in the new year, that you would bless us once again with a good local government. Be with all those in the public service working on our behalf. We commit all these things into your care and seek your favour and grace in the name of Jesus. Amen. Blessings.
Thanks very much. Thank you, councillors, and it's not appropriate way to start off to one of our last meetings. We're having this one a little bit early because our agendas are quite heavy for this week, so we'll deal with the agenda items for today, and I'm aware we have another meeting tomorrow. So that said, apologies for leaves of absence. We've got Councillor Latcham online, and Councillor Rutherford would be on her way, I imagine. I haven't had anything to say that she roadworks. There we go. So that shouldn't be too far away, and we'll have a full house. Councillors, we have confirmation from the previous minutes from the ordinary council meeting on the 28th, also the minutes from the Communities Committee on the 21st of November, and also the minutes from the Infrastructure Committee on the 5th of December to be confirmed as true and accurate record of those meetings. Councillors, could I have a mover and a seconder with regards to all of those? Move Councillor Smith, seconded Deputy Mayor Councillor Fisher. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Linda. Declarations in interest and matters on the agenda, councillors. We have two items there. First, Councillor Smith with the advocacy priorities at 11.9. Councillor Smith, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to advise I have a conflict of interest regarding 11.9 advocacy priorities, as my family and myself and my family market our cattle through Gracemere Sale Yards, and I'll deal with this conflict by leaving the meeting and staying away from the room where it is discussed.
Thanks very much, Councillor Smith. And Councillor Kirkland.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, I have a couple of conflicts here today. Item 11.9, which is the advocacy priorities, I have a declarable conflict. I'm actually a candidate for the state election. I declare a perceived conflict of interest and will leave the room and not participate in the decision-making process around the advocacy priorities. Item 11.12, the development application for an MCU of telecommunications tower. I have a prescribed conflict. My son-in-law and daughter own HDE Engineering at 18 Albert Street, which is within a close vicinity of the tower, so I will leave the room and not participate in the decision-making process. Item 12.1 is the notice of motion by Tony Williams for renewable energy. Mayor Williams, my apologies, Mayor. It's a declarable conflict of interest. The last point in the motion is a vote to advocate to state candidates. I've previously removed myself from the room to avoid community perceived conflict of interest, as I am a state candidate. Unless this motion is dealt with ad seriatim, I will again need to leave the room. So just pointing that out at this stage, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkland and Councillor Smith. Councillors, if there are other conflicts that arise throughout the course of the meeting, please inform the table and we can deal with them at that point in time. Okay, that said, councillors, we'll move on to presentations of petition, public forums, deputations, committee reports. Nils will go on to item 10.1, the councillor discretionary fund application for Parkana Football Club from Councillor Kirkland. Councillors, I'm happy to move as recommended. Seconded Councillor Smith. If there are no questions, I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on straight into our officers' reports. 11.1, the summary budget management report for the period in the 30th of November 2023, and I'll hand over to Marnie. Good morning, Marnie.
Good morning, Mr Mayor, and thank you, everyone. Good morning, councillors. So, firstly, presenting to council today is the summary budget management report for the period to the end of November 2023. That period takes us to around 41.7% of the budget year. Total operating revenue is at 47% of the adopted budget, due to mainly to rates and charges being at 48% of the rates of the revenue budget for rates up to the 31st of December. Private and recoverable works are also ahead of budget at 55%, and other income is also ahead of budget at 53%, particularly in the space of the airport. In terms of our operating expenditure, we're sitting at 32% of the adopted budget, and the key components of this are that contractors and consultants are at 37%, still within budget, as is asset operational expenses, which are also at 37%. And mostly all other expenditure items are sitting within the proximity to budget. The capital income is low at 18% of the carryover budget, due mainly to the non-receipt yet of capital revenue, such as grants and subsidies tied to the performance obligations of capital works. And conversely, the capital expenditure budget is low at 25% of the carryover budget. The amount of expenditure carried over from 22-23 was 8.6 million, and To date, at the end of November, we've seen 40.5 million spent in the 5 months on capital expenditure. We'll address further details in relation to capital revenue and expenditure in the revised budget report, which is coming up next, but in saying that, our total investments are sitting at 68.4 million at the end of the month, and loans are at 126.8. So generally speaking, we're sitting within budget expectations, particularly in the operating space. So the recommendation is to receive the report.
Thanks very much, Marnie. Councillors, any questions to Marnie? Councillor Latcham.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. A question through to Marnie, if I may. Marnie, you mentioned the developers' contributions in the capital income. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the developer contribution and capital income.
Yeah. What's with almost 6 months gone? Is it quite likely or unlikely that they'll be able to get the remainder in this financial year?
Through the Chair, Councillor Latcham, in relation to the developer contributions, we have seen a trend in the past couple of years that we haven't made budget in that space, and that is really dependent upon what development activities will occur in the region during the next 7 months, I suppose, till June. So we will keep an eye on that as we progress through the budget year. However, yeah, that is low, and we acknowledge that is low at the present time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Latcham. Councillor Kirkland.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I was just looking at the administrative expenditure and the fact that that's at 33%, given that we're around the 47% that we're meant to be at. And you've said that that's to do with some of the community and culture unit. Is that just invoices that haven't been paid at this stage or haven't been received? Noting that the revenue is well and truly tracking well. Just curious if you could explain that, flesh that out a little bit more for me.
Sure. So through the Chair. So Councillor Kirkland, in relation to that, it is in relation to community and culture unit and also Advance Rockhampton. So big ticket items, particularly for events that haven't yet occurred through the financial year, so that operating expenditure hasn't occurred. You know, if we take into consideration things like Rocky Nats, that's not yet kicked off really in terms of our overall expenditure, and also the activity within communities and culture. There'll still be things like the show and those sorts of things that have to happen. So yeah, it's really probably activity based, and that's the timing of not undertaking that expenditure just yet.
Thanks, Marnie.
Thanks for that, Marnie. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Fisher.
Mr Mayor, just a comment on the operating revenue and about the income at the airport being up. This actually almost mirrors a couple of our opposition airports within the Bowen Basin area of actually having a drop in income. And Rockhampton Airport has actually benefited since the COVID breakdown, and with flights and new airlines and their destinations. So we're seeing a lot more flying into Rockhampton and then going into the Bowen Basin now than we've had in the past. So it really looks bright for next year if we keep this up, and the figures are looking very, very good. So just keep that in mind, that we're actually, the airport there is operating well and above what the expectations are, but it's attracting more custom that would go to our opposition. So it's something that the team at the airport and Ross have really worked hard on. So I thought I'd just raise that as a comment.
Thanks, Councillor Fisher. Okay, councillors, if there's no further questions to that report, I'm happy to move Officer Marnie's recommendation. Seconded, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Fisher. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Marnie. We'll move on to the next item, 11.2, sorry, the 23-24 revised budget. Thank you, Marnie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, councillors, as we discussed in the briefing last week, this is what's presented to you today is not a budget review, but actually a revised budget. So the budget amendment is presented as a result of a number of changes to the 23-24 budget, particularly in capital revenue and expenditure areas. We've considered that it wasn't sufficient just to undertake a monthly budget review to present to Council in order to capture all those changes. So as a result, we've actually presented a revised budget to Council. Excuse me. So operational budget estimate changes. So Council will recall that we had a deficit of 1.47 million. That was part of our adopted budget in July of this year. We have seen some improved positions in relation to our operating position, and we're now seeing a budget deficit of 897,000 to be adopted as part of this revised budget. So we have, there are quite a number of movements that we've identified where things have been changed, which are documented in the report. I won't necessarily go into that, but we've seen changes through a number of our areas as a result of the budget movements. Excuse me. So unless anyone's got any questions about that.
Councillors, I'll ask for questions and we'll deal with them as we go. The challenge being that there's so many different moving pieces coming through with capital projects now that we can see across the country what those impacts are and how we deal with those in the long-term financial plan, but also the current budget position as well is something there that why the reason why we're bringing this one forward to this meeting today. So, councillors, we did workshop this, but happy to take further questions today if that's okay. Councillor Rutherford, question?
Mr Mayor, we did discuss it. I'm not sure we've workshopped it, and the CEO sort of said we would have the opportunity, if we did our homework, we would have the opportunity to go through it. I notice it's actually, the documentation's in closed session, so I don't know what that means for actually working through it.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't meant for holding up today. It's between now and as we move through the rest of the financial year. I was hopefully going to go, if we have time, the rest of this month and into January as well, to actually go through, because we can always pull out or stop or change those individual capital projects. It probably won't change the whole, might change the bottom line, but effectively the council can decide at any time now that it doesn't want to proceed with a project or a program if it doesn't want to. So I was going to program some time in over the coming couple of months, Councillor Rutherford. So sorry for the misunderstanding. So it wasn't meant to change this one. We would have just ran out of time if we're just up against the wall.
I would have liked to have known that before, but...
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, but it's not all wasted, because then we can take them on board and we can actually pick that up as a starting point for where we want to get to. So, yeah, so if you like, after the meeting, I'll catch up with you and we'll go from there. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think there's, you know, questions we need to ask on projects we're delivering and you know, different ways we're looking at things moving and being carried over. So
if you've got really those ones, if you have them, please send them to Marnie, Ross and myself. We'll pick them up, and in the short term, if we can do something in the short term, we will. But I definitely will pick up on...
It looks like there might be a few of us.
It's probably, as Councillor Rutherford's saying, it's probably worth all of us being there to understand where those issues are.
So, because I think, like, I've marked, you know, heaps of individual items, so, like, I could only give you two, I guess, generalised questions maybe, but I've certainly tagged a lot of individual items.
If you just want to, even if you could send them through, just so I can get the heads up and then at least get some information so we don't come to a meeting or meetings, I would envisage meetings, with a little bit more information so we can actually answer those questions, whatever the questions may be.
Thanks, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I'll send mine through as well.
Okay. Councillor Wickerson?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you to Marnie. Marnie, with in the operational area, there are some savings there for employee costs. But last time we looked at the operational report, there's still quite a few outstanding vacancies. So does that not come into this? I expected that might have been more.
Yeah.
You had quite a few vacancies.
Through the Chair, yes, Councillor Wickerson, there have been some vacancies which have contributed to those savings, but in saying that, there's still active recruitment in a lot of those spaces. So, you know, once those positions are filled, then we still need the budget to maintain it for the remainder of the year. So I suppose we can make an adjustment. It's probably too early at this point in the year to actually be removing budgets too heavily in terms of employee costs, because we're so early into it. We generally make adjustments closer to the end of the financial year in relation to employee costs in that bulk May sort of budget revision at that time. So yeah, at this stage we've looked at various areas, but there are a number of places where people have wanted to maintain those budgets for employee costs in the event that they do recruit and get those positions filled.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, the savings that are here aren't, you know, so one employee cost, it's just prorated across all the vacancies for this portion of the time? Okay, I understand.
Yeah, it's not removal of positions, it's actually just savings because of cost savings in that space. There has been a couple of places, you know, I think we spoke about last week when we talked about the restructuring of Advance and the restructuring of FRW, where we've had some savings come from Advance to offset the costs in FRW, so we've taken those into consideration. But generally, any savings for employee costs is a prorated type of approach.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
And that'd be with a restructure, you make those savings, where the others are just vacancies that there's no expenditure.
Could well be filled.
And that's not any different to any other budget process that we've done previously.
No.
Thanks, Marnie. Councillor Kirkland?
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's what I had highlighted through here as well. Councillor Wickerson has asked a similar question to what I was going to ask, was about that employee costs reductions that are reflected through here, whether or not that was in fact saying, even though we've got the positions vacant, we don't need the money for it because we're not anticipating filling the vacancy. I wasn't quite sure if that's how it was wrapping around it. Thank you so much for elaborating on that. I'll probably get a bit more information from you later.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor
Through the
Kirkland.
Chair, I am happy to go through the capital, just the summary in that space if you like, if you're happy for that.
I'll just go with a couple of questions and then see where we go from there. Councillor Rutherford?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Marnie, I was just wondering whether it would be possible, where we have revenue that offsets an expense, can it be lined up with the expense? Because they sort of show up all over the place. Is it possible to go, well, this is the project, this was the cost, this was the grant money or whatever form of revenue, so that it can easily be identified?
Through the Chair, Councillor Rutherford, generally we do that when we're setting the budget and it's per unit usually. It's just not clear when you're looking at it from are you talking about operational budget changes or?
I think both. You have to really go looking for where the revenue, or you'll pick up a revenue item and then you have to go back and, you know, maybe a couple of pages to find where the expense item is.
Well, with those, through the Chair, with the operational budget changes, that actually should be fairly clear on those few pages.
Yep.
Capital is a little bit more challenging because there might be one grant amount that has a number of jobs that actually are allocated to it. So if I use civil ops as an example, they'll get a black spot funding, for instance, but there might be 4 jobs that fall out of that are expenditure. So there's 1 capital revenue line and 4 capital expenditure lines. So it does make it a little hard, but it should be within the units of, you know, civil operations or FRW or those sorts of things.
And then one other question, and it's probably, if I'm reading this correctly, the 7 loaders, why is that outside budget adoption that we then need 7 loaders?
They're not loaders, Councillor Rutherford, they're actually in relation to the garbage trucks.
Side loaders?
Are they?
Yeah, 7 side loaders.
They lift the bins.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not loaders.
We're actually acquiring...
I know what they are, but I just don't understand why we didn't know we needed them prior to the budget process. Why has it come in as a budget revision?
We spoke about that last week.
I could just clarify that, Councillor Rutherford. So we did have the budget in there for the trucks. That 145 or 245 each per line is actually additional equipment that's adding on to those plan items. Those plan items are a lot more than that individually. And so these were, in particular, one is a new safety feature such as a handbrake that comes on automatically. It's a new safety feature that wasn't in the tender specifications initially, and there's some other camera equipment that's also been added to those trucks. So that's been funded either out of IT or also out of Civil Ops, their contingency budget. So those are additional amounts that have been added to the plant budget to add to those plan items when they're being fitted out due to our acquisition.
I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing, but that's all right. I'll take it offline and, yeah.
The trucks were delayed because of the COVID and having to wait for them to get here. So I'm not sure whether there's a confusion around that, Councillor. I'm happy to talk with Marnie on that anyway to clarify that. Councillor Kirkman.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's just Councillor Rutherford triggered this question, and I had it sitting here, but I was going to ask it based on what CEO said. Now I'm going to ask it again here. Is there is the fleet renewal program and an allowance and additional allocation to manage cost creep. That allocation is significant.
Sorry, Councillor Kirkland, I didn't hear which one you were talking about.
Do you want me to give you the line number for it? It's under fleet and it's for the renewal program, and it's line 23. It's an additional allocation to manage cost creep that's there.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And that's a $1.59 million additional creep. It's a significant creep. My question is, how is that calculated? Is it, we know that these fleet vehicles are coming to end of life and need to be replaced during this period, and then we add CPI, or how is that cost creep? Is it based on it changing over to a different type of fleet, like electric vehicles, or is it based on the actual suppliers saying that in 25, 26, this is what you're going to be looking at? I just wanted to know how it's calculated. Just that it's a significant amount. I'm curious to understand how a creep could be $1.59 million.
Yeah, so there's a couple of parts to that answer, Councillor Kirkland. In relation to when we embarked on the tender process for the garbage trucks, it was identified that what we had in our plant budget for them wasn't sufficient in this financial year, knowing that we had to replace all 7 of them because of the timing. So that has resulted in us having to move out fleet purchases for the current financial year into next financial year and latter years, just to try and balance out what we could with the existing budget for our plant for the 23-24 remainder of the year. The other part of that is that we've also revised our plant replacement budgets because of cost escalations and increases that we're seeing right across fleet. It's nothing to do with electric vehicles or anything like that. It's just simply replacing what we had in our fleet replacement program. We've seen large escalations in costs. So when we've reviewed our fleet program for replacements in latter years, we've seen that amount that we have for that truck, for instance, is not sufficient. So we've had to increase our budgets to accommodate those replacements in those future years. We've seen that with it's market forces, generally speaking, is what's caused the changes in our costs for our fleet.
And especially with the garbage truck, which is a large component of what we do for our community in servicing the garbage and recycling. It's a massive replacement, and one there that we've got to make sure that we're able to have those vehicles there servicing the community, and that's the need to have those vehicles at their optimum and purchasing. And we've been delayed for a while we're waiting for those trucks to arrive, and as that's happened, escalation in costs have occurred.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. May I get more clarification from you, if I may? Just the trucks, is that not all of the $35,000 per truck per side loader that's there separately to the 1.59 million?
That's not an escalation in the actual capital cost of the garbage trucks. they're the additional things that I just mentioned when Councillor Rutherford asked that question. So the handbrakes and the additional camera equipment that's being installed on each of those individual trucks. When we tendered for the price of those 7 garbage trucks, they came in at a significantly greater price than what we had paid 12 months before. So that's consumed the capital budget.
I'm happy to suspend standing orders and we'll pull the documents out and we'll go through line by line if that's the way we want to go. Just curious what the table wants to do with regards to this. We can go through and we get it explained for every item if that's the table's desire.
Mr Mayor, I'm quite happy to push the questions to CEO and the
Just mindful of time, councillors, we've got a really heavy agenda, but we can do that. I don't want it to take away from any questioning from the councillors. That's your role to ask those questions, so I'm making clear, do we want to go through the items one by one and suspend standing orders or deal with them through the CEO and Tamani and further workshop those changes? Right, thank you. Councillors, if there's no further questions on that item, we'll, I'm happy to move, seek a seconder. Seconded Councillor Fisher, Deputy Mayor. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Marnie. Moving on to 11.3, there's a proposed NRMA electric vehicle fast charging stations on council land at 80 to 86 Alma Street. Thank you, Kelly. Good morning.
Morning, Mayor and councillors. I bring this report to you today regarding a request from NRMA to install 4 fast charge EV stations on council land. The council land is at Alma Street, 180 to 186, which is the car park just opposite City Hall back here. So you'll see in the report that internal stakeholders were consulted within council. Although no technical objections, there were some concerns about whether or not this was the right spot for these fast charge stations being council freehold land. So the report talks about if we licence this space, that we can only charge a maximum of $10,000 for the term of the agreement, being that $1,000 per year. NRMA have requested a peppercorn agreement, so just $1 per year, but the market value for these sites at other places such as shopping centres, which of course are a much higher value, realise a lot more than $1,000 per annum. If there's any questions that anyone has?
Councillor Mathers.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. I'm just mindful of phrasing these questions so it doesn't seem like I'm talking against it as opposed to asking the question. So, through you, if that's all right. So, Kelly, the first question I've got is in regards to why have we chosen this site versus, considering that there's already some EV sites right at the back of Town Hall, I would have thought it would be more prudent to, you know, have those charge stations on the other side of the river. I'm just wondering why have we chose to have them merely metres away from charging stations we already have?
Thank you, Councillor Mather. So this wasn't like our office's ideal location. So a number of sites were given to NRMA for them to do their due diligence on. A lot of other sites were considered, such as the car park at the Heritage Village, for an example, was one. However, being on state reserve land, they can only have a maximum tenure of 3 years, being a non-exclusive tenure. So that wasn't desirable to NRMA, needing the 5+5 year tenure. So same thing was the consideration for a site such as Kershaw Gardens, being on state reserve land again. So they were really looking for freehold sites, and this was their I guess best selection of the council sites.
Mr Mayor, another question. Thanks for that, Kelly. Kelly, the other question I've got, it's a bit of a concern to me that we may be tying up land that is freehold that we could develop, sell, whatever it may be, and we're committing for a $10,000 income for 10 years, which could stop us from developing that site. Has there been I'm just wondering what the thought process was behind making that decision.
So as outlined in the report, officers did have concerns about this site. However, there's no development plans for that site in the near future, but that was just raised as a concern that it may hinder any future development of that site.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Mathers. Councillor Wickerson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you to Kelly. Kelly, the only concern I had with it, I have a few concerns about the site, but if officers looked at that, but that it, for 4 bays, for charging bays, it'll knock out 6 or 7 car parks. From what I noticed from the ones right in our own car park, they're standard width. So I don't understand why, because parking's at a premium, so to knock out nearly twice the number than charging bays, I didn't understand why.
They do need a little bit more room for these EV charging bays, so they are a bit wider and they need a bit of room in between. So that's just the diagrams that they've provided of what their requirements would be. So that's the worst case scenario, that it'll be 6 to 7 car parks that it would take up the space.
So when the lease area is determined, is that like a legal survey footprint that we're bounded, whether they use all of it or not?
Yeah, so there will be a sketch plan, so it's surveyed out as to exactly how much. So it might be 6, but it could go into the 7th car park.
Yes, I have concerns about that, because just looking at the ones out here, they look to be standard width, so I just don't understand giving away potentially three car parks. Anyway, I'd like to see the plan.
Thanks, Councillor Wickerson. Councillor Rutherford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Similar questions to both the councillors that have gone before me, but I'm just wondering whether if council decided to do something with that block short of that 10-year period, do we have the capacity to break the lease?
We could put in, NRMA at a bare minimum need the 5 years, so perhaps council, we could put in at that 5 year that, the agreement is just 5 years and then they have to apply to renew that agreement, so that could be a decision that is made.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, it seems just a little funny to constrain that land, I suppose, for $1,000 a year. I'm not sure that the benefits outweigh the risk of it.
Just be careful talking in opposition, councillor. If it's not a question, then leave.
Well, I guess it is a question in that why would officers think that the benefits outweigh the risk? Sorry, Cal.
Sorry.
Why do officers believe that the benefits of this for $1,000 a year outweigh the risk of constraining that land?
So I guess from a sustainability, council sustainability action plan that's referenced in the report, so meets some of those requirements in there. So, but as I said, the other officers don't object on technical grounds. However, not sure about that this is the right site for that to be there.
Thanks, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Kelly, I was a bit concerned about the $1,000 a year. I think that's very, very cheap. And why isn't it taken on the 5 years, which is definite? The +5 might not happen. And to me, it should be taken on the definite, which is the 5 years, and it should be $2,000 a year, which is still very cheap.
Yes, that can be the decision. So the recommendation put up is the 5 + 5 as per the request of NRMA, but that can be the decision that it is just 5 years at $2,000 per annum. So it meets that requirement of that, the $10,000 for the term of the agreement.
Okay, and my second question is, we would be doing some sort of an agreement, I assume.
Yes.
So what if they walk away? Is there going to be a requirement that they rehabilitate the car park?
Yes, the requirement is that they remove the infrastructure and return it, make good, return it to the condition that it was.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Kirkland.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Firstly, through you, Mr Mayor, Kelly, I was curious, is the charging station free to all users, or are NRMA making revenue out of the charging stations?
Yes, they are. It is not free to use. It is revenue through NRMA, so people have to pay. So.
My second question was, in the event that the transformers are required by Ergon for the charging stations, because they are fast charging stations, who's responsible for putting in the transformers to make sure that those charging stations can operate?
Yeah, NRMA are responsible for the electricity supply and any upgrades that are required.
Perfect. And I've certainly had here the 6 car parks taken from the site, which is currently a car parking space, obviously for council and nearby businesses. I was concerned, the same as all my colleagues, around that, but also the longevity and the fact that that site could be used for something else down the track. I was wondering, would this, actually Councillor Wickerson actually asked whether that would need to be more car parks. The reason I ask this is because of an observation of the ones that we have behind City Hall, where we quite often see a lineup of vehicles waiting to use the charging station. So they're not actually, they were taking up or milling around, whatever, in that space. Have they taken into consideration what they're going to do there if that's the case?
For the line, no. So I guess it's just if people could park in other car parks while they wait, if there's any other available, but they shouldn't be lining up as such.
Okay, so there's no shade or seating or anything that's been provided for people that would be waiting to use the charging station?
No.
Okay, that's it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rutherford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just on from Councillor Kirkland's questions. So if it's a business, is there an issue with us benefiting this business by relatively or very cheap rent as opposed to other businesses that would be having to pay considerably more?
Yeah, so under the local government regulation, that's where this $10,000 for the licence. However, council, which is in the report, council can elect to call tenders for the site. If we want an EV charging station at that location, we can most certainly call tenders and test the market. But we are able to do this. We are able to lease for whether it's 5 years or a 10 to a max of $10,000 total value.
Yeah. Kelly, I understand what you're telling me, but it still doesn't answer why we would consider assisting one business over the other. If it was something we were wanting, we would go, yes, we'll go to tender, but this isn't a business that's approached us and they're getting a significant assistance over and above like businesses.
We're able to do it under the local government regulations, so, but if you're concerned about assisting one business when there might be another one out there wanting to do the same, then we can change and we can go to tender for the space. So that is absolutely an option.
If I could just Councillor Rutherford, just to add to that then, it's also a joint funded initiative between NRMA and the federal government, so they've actually got the grant funds to roll these things out in the regional areas, so it's sort of off the back of supporting that program as well, if that helps.
Okay, councillors, no further questions. There have been change to the recommendation there that councillors mentioned as we walked through that, just to a 5-year period, and that the fee be $2,000 per year annual fee. Councillors, can I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Smith, seconded Deputy Mayor Councillor Fisher. Speakers for? Speakers against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those opposed? Yeah, I voted in favour, councillors, so I'll use my casting vote to motion carried. Thank you, councillor. Do you wish to record your votes against that? Could we have councillor Mathers, Wickerson, Rutherford and Latcham vote negative? Thank you, Kelly.
So just the next report
Yep,
is...
next report.
Yep, relation to the conversion of part of council land to road for electricity supply purposes. So we're still talking the same area. So currently there is an old ergon transformer and little building right in the middle of council land at 180 to 186 Alma Street. So Ergon, in their upgrades, they need to actually renew that transformer, and ideally that is not the right location for Ergon, and it's not the right location for council either. So they've requested it to move it over to 174 Alma Street and right on the edge of the road. So basically it takes that transformer out of the middle of council freehold land and over to the road reserve. Now, the most appropriate tenure for these transformers is actually road reserve, so they've requested to convert that small section that's required for the transformer on 174 Alma Street to road reserve, so once they remove it from the middle of 180 to 186 Alma Street. So it's it'll be an area of about 8.5 square metres. So it's similar to the back of City Hall with that transformer, so that's a little road reserve that sits on. If there's any questions?
Just a comment, you'll gain another 2 car parks there with that removal?
Yeah, so we will get car parks there. And if council were to develop 180 to 186 Alma Street in the future, then council doesn't have the cost of relocating and upgrading that transformer. So that's a bit of a win-win for both parties.
Thanks, Kelly. Councillor Mathers.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, I agree. It's good for that building to have gone just to clear that site. But Kelly, the question I've got is that transformer being moved because of the charging stations, or is this something that has just happened at the same time?
Yeah, completely unrelated. Ergon
Okay.
have been doing works to their substation on Derby Street, and this is sort of a flow-on effect of all of that there, so upgrading their infrastructure.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, I'm happy to move recommended. Seek a seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Fisher. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Kelly. We'll move on to 11.5, the conversion of council land for the access restriction strip to the road 3A, Werribee Street, Kawana. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report is in relation to an access restriction strip that council owns at 3A Werribee Street, Kawana. So access restriction strips are pieces of freehold land that is 10 centimetres wide and goes along between a road reserve and a property. So they were used back in the 90s for town planning requirements. However, we don't do that anymore. So we have, if someone wants to put a driveway in, for example, to the road reserve, they have to submit a works in road reserve permit. So we manage it through that way, through our local laws process, through civil ops there. So access restriction strips, they haven't been used for a long time. So Ergon need to put some of their infrastructure across this council strip of land. They are happy, like road reserve is obviously best, but if we don't want to dispose of the land, then they're happy with an easement. However, officers' recommendation is that converting to road reserve is the much more practical use of the land.
Thank you,
Has any
Kelly.
questions?
Questions, councillors? Pretty straightforward question, Councillor Smith.
It's just, I'm sure Kelly would have seen it, the 10 centimetres, that should be 10 metres.
No, it's 10 centimetres wide.
10 centimetres?
Correct. So that's why they were used as a town planning instrument. So basically it means that no one can trespass across it. So it is only 10 centimetres.
Okay. So the Werribee Street, that's our industrial block of land?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
Happy to move, Councillor Mathers. Move Councillor Mathers, seconded Councillor Smith. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Kelly. We move on to 11.6, the proposed sale of 888 to 896 Yamba Road, Parkhurst, to the State of Queensland for Housing Department.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mayor. So this report is presented for council to consider disposing of this property to the Department of Housing, so state government, for social housing. So Council officers have been working with Department of Housing for some time, looking at council sites and what might be desirable for social housing. So Department of Housing has done some preliminary due diligence and have determined that this site is a site that they would wish to purchase from council. They've proposed that they buy it at market value, so that valuation will be jointly instructed by council officers and department, so it's not sort of a one-sided valuation, to ensure that we get the fair price for the ratepayers. So, any questions on that one?
Councillors, questions? Councillor Smith?
Oh, no.
Councillor Kirkland?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just curious, if this had gone through a different avenue, for example, a social housing provider, as opposed to going straight through to giving navigating with the state to purchase the land and put their social housing up, would there have been rates collectible? So a social housing provider, would they have been paying rates as opposed to this time around state? What's the workings?
Yeah, sure, the social housing provider might refer to money, but there are council has the rates concession policies, and I understand that they get a 100% rebate on their general rate and 50% on services for that. So they do get considerable concessions for that. So
a housing provider, sorry Mr Mayor, through you, a housing provider would still be paying something for that land, but state would not, if they put something, will they be?
They'll be paying for services through the chair. So they won't pay general rates. There will be no general rates applied to the state if they take ownership, and it will be, all services will be paid for in full. So all sewage, water, garbage will all be charged to the state. So conversely, as Kelly said, if it was as a housing provider, they would most likely fall under our concession policy and have a different application in terms of the concessions on their rates.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. One other question. So the other question that I had was why it's taken so long. You mentioned that there's been a few hoops to jump through. Can you flesh that out and why it's taken so long for the smart option to actually materialise?
I can't speak on behalf of the state's workings, so council officers have been providing the assistance to the state and options for properties. So I might refer to Angus, he's also been involved in this process, so he might have some more information on the timeframes.
Morning, Mayor and councillors. Probably just a little bit of background. Council provided a list of potential sites to the Department of Local Government Infrastructure, Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning a little over 12 months ago. There's been a number of agencies have looked at that list, and the Department of Housing has come to us probably in the last 6 months to start more detailed discussions around those potential sites and their assessment of those sites. They've been working through their internal processes to get to a point where they've now expressed interest. So that has taken some time to get through the department's internal processes.
Thank you.
Councillor Rutherford?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Mick Rutherford speaking here. I note that this is really prime commercial land. It is zoned, I get that it's zoned residential, but it fronts the highway, which, you know, gives it great opportunities. If it happened to have been zoned commercial, would it been more valuable in that case than being zoned residential?
Unsure, not a valuer. So, however, council did go through, it was through a planning scheme amendment, so it was zoned sport and recreation, and it was through a planning scheme amendment, it was actually changed to low density residential. So I can only assume through that process it was the best zoning and use for that land. Commercial, yes, can sometimes be considered as more valuable, but you have to have the right buyer and so forth for that. So,
all right. Thanks, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Even though I've driven past this block 1,000 times in the last few years, just on the map, that's fairly close to the school. Is that the school fairly close to it?
Up the road, yeah.
There's one building in between, and then there's a little side street, I think, where... I just wondered, is there any specific rules about social housing being close to schools? Like there's no restrictions that way?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Latcham.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, that's next to it. It's in between two caravan parks. The school itself is further north, and but ideally, as a comment, I'd like to see families go in there because it's walking distance to the school. It's not that far. It's probably 500-600 metres to the school. So, but it is in between two caravan parks.
Okay then, councillors, there are no further questions. Mover and a seconder. Move Councillor Mathers, seconded Councillor Wickerson. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to 11.7, the Planning Act for 2016, temporary delegation over the Christmas New Year period.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and councillors. This report is seeking council's approval to temporarily delegate its powers as assessment manager under the planning legislation over the council meeting recess period, which we're approaching in December and January. Councillors would be familiar that this is the process we do each year. There are strict timeframes under the planning legislation as an assessment manager, and the report seeks that delegation to ensure those timeframes can still be met. Happy to take any questions.
No questions coming from the floor. I'm happy to move as recommended. Seek a seconder. Councillor Mathers. Put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Councillors, we might take this opportunity to take a 20-minute recess, and I'll move that we take that the meeting that we be adjourned and come back at 10:15 for a break. Put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Taking the good with the ups and downs. I wanna see how the world turns round. Let's go adventure in the deep blue sea. Home is with you wherever that may be. Home is with you wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming.
Taking the good with the ups and downs. I wanna see how the world turns round. Let's go adventure in the deep blue sea. Home is with you wherever that may be. Home is with you wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming.
Home is with you wherever that may be. Home is with you wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming.
Taking the good with the ups and downs. I wanna see how the world turns round. Let's go adventure in the deep blue sea. Home is with you wherever that may be. Home is with you wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming in sunshine, everybody feeling fine. Everybody join the front line, ain't nobody left behind. Everybody swimming.
Taking the good with the ups and downs. I wanna see how the world turns round. Let's go adventure in the deep blue sea. Home is with you wherever that may be. Home is with you wherever that may be.
Now that we've arrived here, I would not change a thing. Knew that we'd survive here and all the goodness we would bring. Of this I sing. Everybody swimming in sun.
As we might, I'll move that we resume the meeting, and I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Councillor, that leads us on to our next agenda item, which is 11.8, the annual goods and services spend analysis. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. This report presents the annual goods and services expenditure for the 12-month period from the 1st of November 22 till the 31st of October 2023. The local spend on goods and services in this reporting period was heavily impacted by a number of significant capital water and wastewater infrastructure projects. These included the upgrade of the North Rockhampton Sewage Treatment Plant, the Glenmore Water Treatment Plant upgrade, the Glenmore Water Treatment Plant solar generation facilities, and the supply of pipes, fittings and valves for the Mount Morgan Supply Trunk Mains project. It's interesting to note that of those tenders that we called, we actually didn't receive any local submissions for those particular projects. So including those projects within our annual goods and services expenditure results in a 58% spend on local goods and services. If we remove those capital items, the local expenditure results would increase to 73%. We've also continued to do the extra analysis on our plant hire, trades and raking materials contracts, which majority of our small local businesses operate under. We've increased that expenditure under that to $20.9 million in the last 12 months, which is representative of 97% local expenditure under those contracts. But I'm happy to take any questions in relation to the report.
Thanks very much, Megan. Councillors, it's great to see that the money that's being invested back into the local economy and what that means to local businesses and our local community. We understand we've taken projects there that are generational projects for our community that this council is delivering, and I'd like to commend all the councillors on the work and support for those projects that we've undertaken over the last few years, which is no mean feat, but at the end of that, we're setting up our community for the future, and you know, that's what we're charged with as elected representatives. So it is great to see that the money that's being invested is going back into local pay packets and local community. So we'll go to some questions. Councillor Kirkland, question?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And Megan, as you've already highlighted today, that some of that the actual achieving the local content can be difficult with those larger projects. I'm just wondering, within the policy that's highlighted here, the local preference policy, if there's perhaps breadth to actually go another step within that to separate industry and perhaps specify higher weightings for different industry, for example, construction and that type of thing, to ensure there's actually a greater utilisation of the local construction suppliers. Is that something that's there for consideration? And the reason for my question is that I'm getting feedback from local suppliers of plant hire or civil operations people who are feeling that they're being passed over by those larger organisations that actually get awarded the tender, who are then working with southern companies and contractors to deliver the project. And they feel that they could be utilised to a greater degree. What we've got here is a weighting that pulls them back down to only a 5% requirement for within their contracting and supplying to provide local content. And I don't know whether, and that's just across the board, yeah. So it's a very generic across the board of all operations within council to achieve this. So is it worth going deeper with our policy to actually ensure that those local companies are not being passed over when we do award the larger contracts, those greater than $1 million projects where we've got companies that are from out of town who are using the people that they know who are from out of town, as opposed to saying we'd love you to come in and do this, but we'd like you to use local suppliers to a greater degree. Is there any conversation around that? Is there any consideration for going deeper in that policy?
Councillor CEO or Megan?
So through the chair, thank you, Councillor Kirkland. There's probably a couple of elements to your question. So just in terms of the current structure of our local preference policy, so there are two weightings within that policy. So the first one is the minimum of the 12%. Unless the project is over $1 million, it can be reduced to 5%. So that doesn't always happen. It just depends on the nature of the project. The second element of that, which is more in relation to subcontractors, is the minimum 10% tender or local content. So that is a minimum. That doesn't reduce. So it's always 10% in those projects that are over 150,000. That is intended for our construction and consultancy style contracts, so that is where that's really targeted at, and we have found that quite effective. In the past, I think it would have been 1 to 2 years ago, previously it was only required to spend 30% of your contract value with local suppliers to get 100%
marks in that 10% criteria. Sorry, I'm talking a lot of percentages. But it has increased. So in the last review, we did increase that. So now to get the full 10% weighting, you do have to allocate expenditure with local subcontractors of more than 50% of the contract value. So we have done some work in that space to increase it. We do have some plans next year to also look again at we're doing a bit of a minor amendment on that policy at the moment, but we have got some plans to do a wider review of that. And so we have started gathering some information from other councils to see what they're doing in this space, to do a bit of benchmarking. So certainly happy to incorporate any findings through that process as well.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you. That's Megan, through you, Mr Mayor. Yep. That's really good to hear that you're going to be doing that extra review and digging a little bit deeper. I note within the weighting, they can achieve a particular percentage by hiring a building and saying that that's home base here as well. Those types of things, whilst that's great to have them renting a building, I don't know that that's actually necessarily contributing to the overall weighting benefiting our local contractors. So perhaps when you're doing that review, that could be taken into consideration as to obviously comparing with other councils what they do as well in that space.
Yes, Councillor, I'd be keen to look at this in the new council term. I believe there is that that shortfall that we've experienced previously, that they set up an office and claim to be local, which is not benefiting the true nature of the intent of the policy. So again, we can review that in the new council, and I believe it's one there that we can look to maximise opportunities for our local businesses and what that means. Again, we've got a number of large projects there that are happening in the region over the next decade, which is really going to put pressure on our local suppliers and supply chains as well. So I think it's a great opportunity there to make sure that we're abreast of any chinks in the policy, to be able to make sure we maximise the local spend, and especially our council projects, that we maximise the local circular economy when it comes to that cash staying local. So fully understand the questions there, and one there we're really keen to make sure we get the maximum for our locals. Councillors, any further questions to Megan on that one? If not, that is a good story, and one there we can improve on, I believe, in years to come. But that said, it's great to see that we're making sure that our businesses do get the support from our council. So thank you. Okay, I'm happy to move as recommended with that one. Seek a seconder. Councillor Rutherford. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thanks again, Megan. Moving on to 11.9, the advocacy priorities 23 to 25. Councillor Smith.
I was wondering if we could just leave the Grace Smith sale yards out and discuss it separately. Is that possible?
You're right, councillors.
What's your thoughts, Justin? Sort of a package, isn't it? The whole lot's a package.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. Sorry, no, that's how I see it. It's one without the other.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Okay, we'll hand over to Justin. Thank you, Justin.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. The report today deals with our advocacy priorities ahead of the next state and federal election. The next state and federal election are due in 2024 and 25 respectively. What we have is a list of draft advocacy priorities which cover a range of portfolios, a range of different areas within the region, and which have progressed or are progressing through business case or detailed design and costing phases. What we're also looking for through this report is an endorsement from Council to go and work with government, opposition and other candidates ahead of both elections to put forward those priorities and to seek election commitments, as well as some policy change. I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Justin. Councillors, questions? Do we wish to go through the projects in detail, or Councillor Rutherford?
Just comment, Mr Mayor, and you know we have talked about this quite a lot over the time, and I think it's a great list of projects, and thank you to you and Justin for pulling this stuff together and the advocacy you've already been doing in this space.
Thanks, Councillor Rutherford. Councillors, if there are no questions, I think we've positioned ourselves very well with these priorities as we've undertaken that background work to get us to a position where we believe we've got a good list of priorities there that can take our region forward, and one there that can benefit our community for many years to come. So we want to work with the other levels of government, because we can't shoulder that our future without all levels of government working together, and that's a great way to have these priorities endorsed and be able to then work with the candidates and achieve the maximum for our community during those elections. It's great to be able to provide that out to the general public and the community, so they can then work with those candidates to make sure that they're going to benefit the whole region when it comes to those priorities that we have on our lists. Okay, that said, there's no questions. I'm happy to move. Deputy Mayor, second. Put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We'll invite the other councillors back into the meeting, please. Thank you, Justin. Oh. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to 11.10, a minor change to the development permit for material change of use for non-resident workforce accommodation. Kathy, we'll hand over to you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. This is a minor change to the development permit for the non-resident workforce accommodation camp and warehouse use to support the construction of the Fitzroy to Gladstone water pipeline project. The changes... I always do this. No. Every time. There we go. The changes relate to the accommodation component of the development permit and are required as the project arrangements have reduced the overall demand for the capacity of the Rockhampton camp. The application is now proposing to reduce the accommodation capacity from 200 persons down to up to 136 persons, and the facility for the camp will be amended from 50 accommodation buildings to 34 accommodation buildings, and also introducing staging with the construction now planned over 2 stages. The overall development site will remain the same, however the camp layout will change. Where do I point this? Up. So the overall development layout will change from the original to the proposed. So that's the original. Can we go next slide, because this is not working for me. Yeah, to the proposed camp layout. So you can see in the purple square, that's the stage 2 component, which is the last 30 to 36 rooms. The minor changes do not introduce any further or new compliances with the assessment benchmarks contained in the applicable planning scheme codes, and are therefore recommended for approval.
Thank you, Kathy. Questions? Go Councillor Smith as the Divisional Councillor for the area. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Kathy, I was surprised that they would downscale it, because we don't know if this other major project's going to happen, and the pipeline's already started. The start of the pipeline, has that got anything to do with the fact they're downscaling, because they realise they don't need as many rooms?
Through the chair, so they had, through the sequencing with staff, so most of the guys or workers were due to actually come up and work on the north side of the project. However, they've now shifted them down to the south side, which means they will be staying within the Gladstone region instead of Rockhampton.
Oh yeah, that was what I heard. I don't think that's in here, is it? But I think that's the word out on the street, that a lot of the workers will be coming from Gladstone.
So they'll just be staying within Gladstone camps, is what I'm led to believe.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And just mindful that the larger component of the project is in the Rockhampton area with the water treatment plant. Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Kirkland.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just within, thanks, Kathy. Sorry, within this documentation, and it may just be that it's I'm missing a link here somewhere when in the reading of it, but it's just talking about in 1.5 about the operational works development permits that they need to provide. Have they provided those access to parking, stormwater and site works, and has construction started already?
Yep, so the development application for the operational works site has been approved and is under construction, so they've
already put these in?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought they must have,
yeah,
because I'd seen work happening out there and I thought, well, this report was saying those things were outstanding, but that's okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor Kirkland. Councillor Mathers, anything from the planning?
No, Mr. Mayor, but happy to move, thank you.
Happy to move. Move Councillor Mathers, seconded Councillor Smith. Question, Councillor Rutherford?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, delayed reaction there. I'm just wondering, do these workers' camps, do they pay rates once they're established?
Sorry?
Do they pay rates once they're established? Yep. So, yeah. Different to their infrastructure charges? Yep.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Councillor Rutherford. Okay, move Councillor Mathers, seconded Councillor Smith. Put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to 11.11, the request for negotiated infrastructure charges for development permit. And again, Kathy, thank you.
So sticking with the same project, the applicant on behalf of the Fitzroy Gladstone Water Pipeline has requested the infrastructure charges be reconsidered in recognition of the temporary nature of the development. The request is for Council to enter into an infrastructure agreement to include both development permits, being D70 2023, which is the pipe laydown area, and then D74 2023, which is the workforce accommodation in the warehouse. Council officers agree that the reduced charge is reasonable given the land use and development permits are temporary for 2 years. The proposed reduction will not result in Council being left exposed to financial liability and more appropriately reflects the cost involved with the development on Council's infrastructure networks for the life of the project being the 2 years. Therefore, it is recommended that Council enter into the infrastructure agreement for the reduced amount.
Kathy, what if the project goes longer than 2 years, though? Is there ways to
Yes.
go back?
Yep. So if it was to then be extended, the development permits would then have to be also revisited and extended as well, which means the infrastructure charges would be amended at that time.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay. Councillors, any questions to that? It seemed pretty straightforward. I don't think it's an onerous request. I'm seek a mover and a seconder. Move Councillor Mathers, seconded Councillor Smith. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Kathy. Moving on to 11.12, the development application for immediate change use for a telecommunications facility. And Councillor Kirkland, step out of the room. Thanks very much, Kathy.
Okay, this development application is for a telecommunications facility located at 45 to 49 George Street, Rockhampton City. The subject site is located in the specialised centre zone on the corner of Albert Street and George Street along the Bruce Highway. The proposed development will see the construction of a 26-metre tall There we go. 26-metre tall telecommunications facility that is of a monopole design. The narrow structure will be finished with neutral low contrasting colours and will be set back 27 metres from the George Street road frontage. There will also be a 3-metre wide landscaping strip around the tower's entire compound lease area on ground to soften the visual impacts of the proposed facility at the ground level and to those walking and driving past. It is, however, acknowledged that the tower will be visually prominent. However, a montage provided by the applicant does show that it will be no less prominent than existing vertical infrastructure within the area. The facility is required as analysis shows the existing Telstra infrastructure within the locality is inadequate and congestion has increased due to the high demand of wireless services. The existing Telstra networks cannot provide adequate services to the existing projected population and the targeted area. As you can see from the area mapping, there is a coverage gap for Telstra, and this facility will provide improved 4G and 5G coverage to businesses and residents and allow Telstra to meet their service delivery standards. The application was subject to public notification for 15 business days and no submissions were received. Technical reporting demonstrates that there will be no adverse health impacts from the facility, with EME levels calculated at 9.69% out of 100%. The development generally complies with the provisions included in the applicable planning scheme codes and does not compromise the strategic framework, therefore is recommended for approval subject to the conditions outlined in the report.
Thanks very much, Kathy. Questions, councillors? Councillor Rutherford?
Kathy, had they considered any other sites? Do we know that at all? Or?
They did, yes.
Yeah.
So as part of their analysis, they did try to look at their existing infrastructure to upgrade those. However, it just wouldn't meet their requirements for the 5G, I believe. And they also did contact Brown Park to try and co-locate this facility either on the lighting or the new structures within Brown Park. But because of the timing and the redevelopment and unknowns within that proposed development, they couldn't come to an agreement.
Mr Mayor, it's a little pity. This is a really high-profile corner there, and I know that they've said, oh, well, there's already electricity poles and the like, but they're not 26 metres tall. And the other thing is that when we do get those televised games at Brown Park, which I'm certain is going to happen more often, that's going to be sort of front and centre in that camera line as it pans along the ranges. So it's, you know, I know we have little choice in these applications, but yeah, sometimes I just,
No, point taken. I thought the exact same, but these things are a necessity that our community is expecting coverage, and unfortunately that's the downside to the technology space we live in. That said, if there's no further questions, can we have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Wickerson, seconded Councillor Mathers. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Can we invite Councillor Kirkland back into the room? Thanks very much for that report, Kathy. It was unanimous, sorry. Thanks, Councillor Kirkland. We'll move on to 11.3, the local laws making process. And straight into John's report. Thanks very much, John.
Good morning, councillors and mayor. We're here in relation to the local law review, or the local law making process that took part or started in 2020. Sorry. So I guess within the, I don't remember the exact date, but in October we went out for public consultation on the two subordinate local laws that were approved to be reviewed, being the parking local law and the animal management. So as a result of the public consultation, we received 45 submissions, 40 being specific in relation to native bees, and another couple of others, but I'll just, do I control this? Yep. So I guess as part of the public consultation, the effects of barking dogs in the community was raised, the impact of external factors on barking dogs, the nuisances, native bees in the ecosystem, cost of living impacts with infringements, permitting of roosters within town, therapy dogs classed as working dogs, minimum standards not being complied with in the community, and changes in design to off-leash parks, being either fencing or removing fencing or playground equipment inside the areas. So all of these matters were considered as part of the public consultation, with some some of them requiring changes to the local laws, with others just being passed through to other departments for future consideration, like designs of off-leash areas and that kind of stuff. So the amendments, no, good go. So I guess some of the major ones, the amendments down on nuisance, well, the major submissions were the barking dogs create a result of external factors, barking dogs can create health problems, and barking dog complaints can be due to neighbourhood disputes. I guess in relation to that, we didn't make any changes to the barking dog provisions as a result that there's already sufficient information and investigative powers in there to allow us to do it, and those, I guess those external factors are required to be disproven as part of our investigations. Amendments to the parking provisions. Increase of cost of living affects parking, and lack of regulated parking and non-regulated parking. I guess we reviewed a lot of that. So the 2016 study was still shown as being current, as we did a further short study in November that showed there was still sufficient parking within the area, including all day. In light of the current financial impacts on the community, we changed the infringement rate from 0.6 to 0.5. Amendment to the actual native bee. So native bees are listed as a stingless and as a consequence cannot create harm to anyone. Other local governments do not regulate native bees. With the introduction of varroamide into Australia, it's more important than ever that the native bees population increases. Native bees can provide honey for human consumption, and I guess a lot of the submissions encourage council to deregulate native bees. So as a result, we modified the restrictions on native bees as to the number of hives you could keep, while still maintaining the enforcement side of bees in general, to allow that, I guess, the hives have to be of a certain location on a yard, so just not distance from someone's property or someone's dwelling, and that they must not create a nuisance. So I guess the actual changes were, while there was some wording changes, I guess they were the major physical changes, just to, as part of the legal review, the legal team picked up that there was just some wording inconsistencies, as well as the major change being from 0.5 to 0.6 from all the increased penalty units that were 0.4, and removing that approval for native bees. So there is no longer that requirement to have a certain number of hives on a certain size lot. Questions?
Thanks very much for the report, John. We have some questions. Councillor Latcham online, and Councillor Mathers.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Questions for John. John, barking dogs. So I just didn't read it in there. Maybe I'm missing something. What's the requirement in order for our officers to go out to investigate barking dogs complaint? Because currently it's 3 stat decks, isn't it, to facilitate that process?
John, you
through the chair. So it's just the same change that we brought back to the briefing session earlier this year. So it removes that specific number and just says that if it creates pretty much a nuisance in the community.
Okay, so just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, so if someone has a complaint about a barking dog, they just need to log it through the process and then the officers will investigate.
That's right.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, we'll still investigate barking dogs, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's just a change in the provision of how it's actually worded.
Yep.
To provide more consistency across us, other councils and other states.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Latcham. Councillor Mathers and Deputy Mayor Councillor Fisher.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Just through you to John. Morning, John. John, in regards to the first thing I wanted to say, it's great to see this is finally coming to the table, which is good, so thanks for your hard work there. It's great to see those penalty points being reduced for parking, and I'm really pleased to see the change to the barking dog law, which gives local laws officers a little bit more breadth to do their job and that sort of thing, and it makes it easier for the constituents to put complaints in and follow the process, so that's really good. I do have a bit of an issue in regards to the native bees, and the question that I've got for you is, I noticed that the number has been removed completely, and Doug and I have discussed this in great length in regards to these changes and what was coming up. I just want to cast your mind back to May this year, where a chap by the name of Tim Hurd, who was the president of the Australian Native Bee Society, did a deputation via Teams. I don't know if, I think most councillors and mayor were here. And we discussed, it was quite good, he gave us a very good education on native bees, and we obviously all know the importance of them, and I totally agree that, you know, with what we've done, there needs to be a definition made between the European honeybee and the native bee, which we have done in that local laws. I see we've defined them. But there was quite a discussion about, you know, commercial and recreational beehives and that type of thing. And one of the things that Mr. Hurd mentioned to us was that he has a commercial amount of native bees. He also has a recreational amount. I think he said that he lived on approximately 400, 500 square metre block of land down at Brisbane, and he had around 30 odd beehives in his backyard. He then mentioned about his commercial business side of things with his beehives. And I sort of said, well, how many of them? And he said, well, we've got hundreds. I said, where are they? And he said, oh, of course, out on a rural block. And I said, well, what do you mean, of course? He went, well, you know, if you want to have a commercial quantity of beehives, you certainly don't want to have them within, you know, your residential area. And I sort of said to him, well, how many beehives do you think would be appropriate for a residential area? He said, well, I've got about 30. He said, and there'd be no reason why you'd want any more than that. So my question to you is, with that information coming from the president of the Australian Native Bee Society, why have officers not taken his recommendation? Why have we given, you know, and I agree that they, you know, native bees, we don't want to restrict them to what honeybees are, but why have we not capped it? Why have we, you know, that means someone can put 150 beehives in their backyard in the middle of town. So why did we not take that advice on board?
So I guess through the chair, so we were just more aligning with what the community's expectation was, given that we had so many submissions in relation to deregulating, not having a number in there. I guess we also looked at what other councils around us are currently doing, and most councils actually have no regulation at all in relation to native bees, so they don't have a nuisance provision or anything else in there as well. So as for a number, it's really hard to pick a number. So 30 is actually a significant number of hives, and he was actually, from my recollection, he was actually running a business as in he was breeding queens in his backyard. That's the reason he had 30 hives. So he was actually running commercial business from his premises as well.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Well, he said his commercial side of things were out on a rural block. He referred to them as recreational beehives, the one in his. But it was a while ago. It was back in May, so I really can't. I can't, you know, put my hand on my heart and say that he wasn't. But yeah.
No, that's all right. So yeah, so my recollection was he was collecting, like he was actually breeding queens to actually provide to other people. So it's hard to say. As for a number, there's no other council. There's no other comparative we have for a number, so it's very difficult to say, yep, you can have 30. Is 30 the number we want? Is, you know, like European bees have one hive on a small block, so it's very hard to actually give that information out. And I guess from the submissions, there was a lot of talk about the Vieira mite, which is actually going to impact the native, well, not the native bees, sorry, the European honeybees and the other bees that are going to be in the region. So having that number removed gives the community, I guess, that allowance to make their own decisions, but are still the power to reduce that nuisance if it does occur.
Mr. Mayor, just another question, and that leads me on to my next question, the nuisance side of things. So, you know, I look at how difficult it is for us, for our local laws officers to do their jobs in regards to barking dogs. You know, how are we going to be in a situation where if someone does complain of nuisance, who determines, how do we determine that how many beehives or that those bees are creating a nuisance? So how do we do that? How do we then police that? And how do we then, if there's no restriction on numbers, how do we then go to that beekeeper and go, well, look, you've got a nuisance, you have to reduce your number of beehives because there is no number to reduce it by. So it ties council's hands if there is a nuisance reported. To me, it just looks like we're just opening ourselves up for another issue that could be as bad as barking dogs. If you have, and I'm not saying that every beekeeper is going to have 100 hives. I'm not saying that, I understand that. But they could. You could have someone running a commercial venture in their backyard in a 400 square metre block of land. how are we going to police that? Who, if someone says it's a nuisance, how do we say yes, we agree it's a nuisance, or no, we don't?
Yeah, through the chair, I guess that gives us, we still have the power to, I guess, dictate how far they can be from a different premises, so an actual house, so that it ensures, I guess, that we're keeping them away from other people's houses to reduce that nuisance. So it's a greater power than actual barking dogs, where it is just subjective as to what is a nuisance. I agree that it is sometimes difficult to determine what a nuisance is, even for bees, but I guess we would work on the fact that if it is creating a nuisance for someone around them, that we would work with that person to actually reduce the nuisance itself.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there. Mr Mayor, if it's all right with you, is there any way that I could request that
This be separated from
whether
the
at Seritum, or can we remove it from the, so we can deal with that separately?
Two parts.
So seriatim is step by step. So you do 1, 2, 3, 4. So this would be actually 2 separate motions. So I think Linda's got one there, councillors. So
Councillor, I'll keep going with questions before we get to this point. Councillor Mathers, Councillor Deputy Mayor, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was actually going to commend the officers for this report. There's been a number of things there that I think have been tidied up really well. And I'm going to be the total opposite to my colleague beside me. I think what has your recommendations for the keeping of native bees is actually a really positive step. I don't breed native bees or have native bees in my own yard, but they are very, very different to the European bees. They have a really important role in our local ecosystem. So I was really glad to see that we're going to be like Gladstone.
Councillor, we just need to be careful not speaking for the motion or against it's a question.
I was glad to see that we had looked at other local governments in the surrounding area and how that restriction in Rockhampton has been removed. So I'd like to commend this report, Mr Mayor. And
I think we'll deal with that after the resolution, Councillor. Councillor Kirkland, then Councillor Smith, Councillor Rutherford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well done. Always a lot of work to try and navigate these spaces, John. So I think you've listened to the public, and that's a really important thing, so thank you. I have a very random question for you. In reading through the policy and that sort of thing, I try to also put myself in the mind of just the average punter who's reading this and saying, okay, I want to get myself a dog, for example, and I'm reading here that I have to ensure that the excretia and food scraps and other material that is or likely to become offensive is collected daily, and if not immediately removed from the premises, is kept in a waste container of a kind approved by an authorised person. And I thought, so I've got to pick up my dog poo and get someone to tell me what container I've got to put it in. Is that within, I couldn't find in the document what that container is or who I get to decide what the authorised container is. Is it a bin?
It can be, yeah.
Is it the red bin?
Through the chair, it can be, the bin, yeah. I guess it is, it's a nuisance.
Very official is all.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Through the chair, yes, it is very official and well worded. I guess that majority of our local laws comes from the model local laws developed by the state.
Through you, Mr Chair, could you not put in there, for example, the garbage bin be a container that's approved, red lid container?
Depends where that garbage bin could be. Someone could think that could be a public one somewhere, or that could in front of a shop, for example, or something like that. That could create a nuisance in itself, Councillor. So just depending.
Through you, Mr Mayor, could you not say domestic bin? I'm nitpicking. It's just an interesting little thing that I found. I'm not going to join them out and over it. I just thought, that's interesting, the way that's specified. But
We can take that on notice.
Bit of entertainment for us.
For any future ones.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkland. Councillor Rutherford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Okay?
No, you're right.
Yep. First of all, I agree totally. I'm going to be specific about the native bees, and I agree totally with the decision to treat them separately, of course. I am, however, like Councillor Mathers, and a little concerned about just having a nuisance value. For most other keeping of animals, we look at what is in the best interest of the health and welfare of an animal in regards to the size of a lot it can be kept on, or how many can be kept, whether it's birds, horses, dogs, cats, whatever. We don't have anything like that for the keeping of native bees. So when it comes down to proving that there's a nuisance, it's very subjective, and might I say probably a little unfair, because it's not giving any guidelines to those people that are keeping them, or to the council of officers that need to decide whether they're a nuisance. Now, I get that you've said the 10 metres from the boundary should help, but they also swarm, and if they were, you know, a swarm from a certain number of hives, whatever that happens to be, may not cause anyone any distress. However, a swarm from, you know, 100 hives may very well, you know, on the swings for the next door neighbour where the children are playing, may cause some distress. So, and then that becomes an issue also between neighbours. So are we setting ourselves up for some real concerns down the track purely because we haven't made a decision about or given any direction about what we think is an acceptable number of hives to be kept in a certain amount of space? To me, it's just a matter of going, sort of foreseeing that there could be issues and making sure that we've got some information behind
Councillor?
that. Yes, that is a question.
There you go, John.
So through the chair, it's hard to give that number because the Biosecurity Act actually is silent on it. It actually excludes them from it.
So if we were deciding for any other animal, where would we get our information from?
So, a quick question just to John. Within the schedule, if I could, and this probably might help the councillor, within the amendment of Schedule 2, requirements for approval to keep an animal, so down under, so you've got the bee section, which is excludes native bees, which is number 11, which talks about 2 hives, 800 square metres to 1,000, da 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 da. Then down further under 15, you've got native bees, and it says 2 or more hives on a premise with an area less than 500 square metres. B, 3 or more hives with an area of 501 to 1,000 square metres, and 4 hives on a premise with an area between 1,001 square metre to 1,500. What does that mean, John? And that might go towards...
I guess, so through the chair, so that requirement for approval means that anything under those numbers you can just have without an approval. So you could have that number on native bees, but yeah, that, I guess as a result of public consultation, that section was removed.
Mr Mayor, if I could just say, you know, this is as much about protecting those people that want native beehives in their property so that they're not going to be the subject of complaints just because someone doesn't want them there as well, you know. So I just think that there is a weak point. As much as I agree with the fact that they should be there, I think we're setting ourselves up without any further direction.
Yeah, that's speaking against the motion, Councillor. I think we just got to be...
I'm not speaking against the motion, Mr Mayor. I'm just saying that without that content, without that direction to people, I think we could have...
Councillor, but the direction's been out to public consultation, and that's a request from the community to come back to say that. That's what the change has been.
Yes, Mr Mayor, but often our subordinate local laws are also based on biosecurity or animal welfare information as well. It's not just something that we're directed by the community. So,
Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. It's only just recently I've realised how much work is involved in the keeping of bees, and bee people do it very well. Other people coming into it mightn't do it all so well, but my question is, when you were talking to other local governments to get a feel of what they were doing, John, did they ever say that there was any nuisance complaints from native bees?
Through the chair, I didn't ask them if there was any nuisance complaints in relation to it. We were more just discussing what the local law was.
Okay. And my second one is what I mention every time about cats. And we don't register cats. And I always wonder why they're in the local laws, but I understand if someone had 50 cats next door to you, you'd want something done with them. And it says a multiple cat approval. So how can we approve multiple cats if they're not registered? It'd be like having a permit for 3 dogs.
But through the chair, yes, it's a very similar process. So you can have more than the number of cats with an approval, even without registration.
Yeah, okay. So if you had a complaint that the person next door to you had too many cats, how can you prove it? Because you'd have to go to the property and count cats, and during the days they're a bit hard to find. At night time you'd be better off to count them at night time. But I just wondered how you would handle that. I understand why it's in the local laws, but it's the way it's written. I'm not sure that you'd be able to do anything about it.
Through the chair, yeah, it is a difficult thing, but I guess we do it on a regular basis where people do apply for keeping of animal approvals for cats. It's normally the responsible ones that are applying for it, but ultimately, yes, we will go to someone's property and try and count cats, and normally you will, if they've got more than the permitted number, you'll normally tell quite quickly.
So that's more than 2?
Yep.
Councillor Wickerson, then Councillor Latcham.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Through to John. John, my understanding is that the nuisance that native bees can cause is the swarming if they go next door or a neighbouring house and they cluster around. Is that the only nuisance that they can create? Do you know?
Through the chair, yes, normally.
Yeah, they obviously don't make a lot of noise or bark or sing or anything like that.
Through the chair, no.
And I would imagine also that these they're quite valuable in their own right, but also valuable for pollinating and whatever. So if a swarm did go next door and set up camp, the owner would probably want to go and get them back fairly quickly. I imagine these things are an asset or valuable. But is there any way we can write into our rules that if that happens, if they did swarm next door, that you can compel someone to go and do that? I think they would do it naturally, but to go and retrieve them, would that solve the issue?
Through the chair, I don't think we could compel someone to go and get their bees. It would be very difficult. We could issue a compliance notice to remove the bees from someone else's yard, but actually compelling them to go in someone else's yard, they'd require permission from the person next door and a lot of other legal problems.
Yeah. So is that already in there that to comply with that, to retrieve them? So I didn't quite understand what you said.
Yeah, through the chair, it wouldn't be not something we'd normally do. We just issue a compliance notice to stop the nuisance or to reduce the nuisance, which is up to them as to how they interpret that and what they're required to do. And I guess the legalities of what they need to do is up to them and not up to council to push forward.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wickerson. Councillor Latcham.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and through to John. Just a comment, just to say thank you for bringing this report. It's been a long journey. It's been over 2 years through different deputations and other information gathering processes. And it's great to see that the community consultation was quite passionate about some changes to this proposed legislation. So thank you very much for bringing this to the table, and I look forward to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. John, just before we finish, how many complaints have we got with native bees?
It's difficult, through the chair, it's difficult to tell. They're all our animal complaints are all based out of one request type, so it's difficult to tell. I guess we went through this morning a couple of, we went through about 50 out of the 700. The majority of what we'd had, or what we could see, were native bees. They were European bees.
Okay. All right, councillors, no further questions through to John. Councillor Mathers?
So, yeah, Mr Mayor, I just want to clarify two things, which is I did consider when I asked to have this looked at separately, I did consider maybe foreshadowing, putting another motion forward, but I understand you don't like making policy on the run, I think is what you've said, so I've tried to take that on notice and not put something else forward. Can I just ask, so which one of these is, just so councillors know, which one is relating directly to the native bees? Because
The first one. No, not that one. No, not that one, Linda. Yeah, that first one there.
So A.
Yeah.
And so
no, sorry, there's two motions.
Yep.
You can see there, A1 is animal management, then B is talking about the animal management. So that's the first one there is to deal with native bees. The second one is the parking one.
Oh, okay, so right, yes, I'm with you, they're both number one. Okay, so the second one's to do with barking dogs, the first one's to do with bees.
Through the chair, no, the subordinate local law 2 is in relation to all the animal management changes.
Okay, but so if someone was to vote for or against that first one, they're voting for or against the bees and the dogs.
That's correct.
And that's not what I requested to have separated.
You can't separate them because it's a complete rewrite to the amendment, because that's actually referring to the amended local law, so omitting and inserting, without going back and actually taking bits out of that actual attached local law that's in there. We can't do it. Okay, that's the issue.
All right. Well, if that's the case, then I don't want to do it, because I would like to see the barking dogs law, signed off as quickly as we possibly can. But if we can't pull them apart, can I request that we lay this matter on the table until we work out a way that we can separate them and deal with them separately?
It'd probably best is that there be a separate motion to say that you can't. Basically can't. You'd have to do a motion to get the table's views around the native bee matter first, to say that you don't support the amendments to the native bees, or you do support the amendments, so whatever that motion may be. And then if that was, depending if that was won or lost, would then mean whether or not we deal with that current local law as it is within the agenda, or we go away and rewrite it. So it really is, the first motion is to deal with either support it or amend, either support what is in the amendment for the native bees, or you don't support it, is the first question to ask. So you need a motion to say you do not support the local law in its current format, the animal management local law in its current format, and
I suppose if I put that motion forward, that will at least test the table as to what they were thinking in regards to the native bee policy, I suppose. So would I be able to put forward a motion that we...
Councillor, I normally don't accept it, but I'm happy with this instance as we can't separate it out of the whole decision. So I'm happy for a motion to be put to the table to give us direction on what to happen with that, because otherwise, if it was a standalone item, I'd probably ask for a due course to put it to the next council meeting. But because we can't separate this one item out of the whole suite of local laws, I'm happy to take a motion to the table.
All right, I appreciate that, Mr Mayor, because otherwise I really don't want to ask for it to be laid on the table, because...
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, John just alluded to, if you went back to, for what the amendment for the animal management subordinate local law, you could adopt what went out to public consultation. That's got it with the restrictions around the native bees, the number of hives on the expanded blocks of land, and needs approval. So that's, you could move that you adopt the animal management subordinate local law that went out to community consultation.
So, and through you, Mr Mayor, Evan, or Mr CEO, I understand that. The problem is I don't for 1 minute want to say that native beehives can only be reduced to what European bees are. I don't want to see that at all. I just don't want to see an unlimited number. That's all. So I don't want to turn around and say, no, you can only have 1 or 2 hives. I'm happy for people to have multiple hives, but I just think we're setting ourselves up for failure if we put this through as unlimited.
So through the chair, so the native bee number is different to what the European bee is in the public consultation document.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I can't recall that. What are those numbers, John?
I think European bees are only permitted at 1 under 500, where you're permitted up to 2 under 400.
Yeah, but native bees, what's the number for them? Sorry, because I can recall the European bees. I didn't think I ever saw a number for native bees. Sorry for the hold up, Mr. Mayor. And councillors.
Oh, that's all right, I've got it.
Mr Mayor, I think I'd like to move a procedural motion that the motion be put first
No,
untested.
Sorry, you haven't got a motion to put it yet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry, Mr Mayor.
So it was if you wanted 2 or more hives on a premises less than 500 square metres, so you could have up to 2. 3 or more hives on a premises between 500 and 1,000, so you could have 3 on that size lot, and then 4 or more, so you'd have 4 lots between 1,000 and 1,500.
Yeah, and Mr Mayor, I don't think that's anywhere near enough. I think people have a right to have multiple. You know, you could have that many naturally occurring native beehives. You know, on my block I had 3 native beehives that naturally occurred, you know. So no, we definitely need a lot more than that, but I think the number needs to be...
Councillor, I'm happy for you, if you want to test the water, that there's a motion there that Council not support the proposed amendments of the Animal Management Subordinate Law 1, 2023 and the matter be workshopped. You're moving, Councillor Mathers. Have you got a seconder? You have a seconder?
Can I just ask a question, Mr Mayor? So if it's workshopped, will it come straight back to the table then?
If we can fit it in, because we've got to fit this in before the end of January, before the caretaker period.
Yeah, and Mr Mayor, you know, I understand the points, and I really want that amendment to the dog, you know, to the barking dogs out there, but I just...
Yep, if you've got to speak to the motion,
okay.
Councillor, we need a seconder. You're going to second it? Councillor Smith, seconder. Okay, we move into debate. Councillor Mathers, speak to the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, all I can say, and it's just something that I've got the feeling for, but I just feel I know the amount of calls that I get in regards to barking dogs and other things like that, and we don't have very much control over them. The fact that if this is passed with unlimited numbers, how do we... Who makes a decision on a nuisance? If it is a nuisance and we go there, yes, I know we're trying to say there's requirements of 10 metres from a boundary, but these bees have wings; they can fly wherever they do, wherever they want. I know they don't travel as far as European honeybees, but they still will travel looking for, you know, for pollen. You know, and it could be in other people's backyards. I know for a fact that they do swarm. I know that usually the experts say they only swarm when they're changing over the queens, but they don't. They swarm at other periods. I've experienced that at my own place on a number of occasions. And, you know, with an unlimited number, if we have to go and knock on someone's door, how do we control it? If someone says there's a nuisance, how do we turn around and say, this is what we're going to do, or this is what we require you to do? I understand that we've had 40 submissions supporting, you know, that it's unlimited numbers, but there's, you know, another, you know, 69,000 people out there that haven't, you know, that haven't put that. I understand they've all had the ability to do it, but they've probably gone native bees. It doesn't make any difference to me. But if you're living next door to them, and if someone chooses, and I know I'm going to the extremes, Mr Mayor, but if someone chooses to put 150, 200 hives in their backyard, is that something that you really want to live next to? You know, and I am not against native bees. You know, a reasonable number of hives, I think, is fine. But, you know, unless we can put something there, Mr Mayor, that's maybe it says if it's commercial, you know, that has to be in a rural area. Anyhow, that's about all I've got to say.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mathers. Do we have a speaker against the motion? Councillor Kirkland.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and to my colleague, I admire your passion, and however, I'm going to speak against the motion based on the fact that across the state there are no other people that have these restrictions in place, and also that schools are currently installing these native beehives for pollination of planting and for educational, environmental benefits that come from those. I think the community is becoming quite well educated around native bees and the differences between the native bee and the European bee, and becoming quite familiar with how to navigate potential swarmings, though the distances that are put into this particular policy are quite significant from neighbouring properties. My understanding is that those swarmings would happen closer to the hives as opposed to jumping 10 metres across the fence to the neighbouring property, though I'm not an expert. Also, I feel that we need to give that breadth to and response to the community who have actually had the opportunity to comment on these changes and respond appropriately to those people who have taken the time to put in their submissions and support it. So I will be speaking, I'm against the motion for today and would like to see the rest of the actual policy go through unchanged.
Thanks, Councillor Kirkland. Councillors, there's another speaker for the motion. Councillor Smith.
Oh yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I'm quite happy. I was quite happy originally to have no restriction, but then I thought about the numbers, and as I said before, bee people do it very well. We don't know if other people do it very well, and I know at my property I have native beehives everywhere, but I've had to get one removed when I had a whole lot of people coming, because people panic when they see bees. They don't realise that they are the friendly bees. But I'd like to workshop it. Is the number 30? Is it 50? Is the number 100? I think we need to be have in our own mind what the number should be.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Another speaker against the motion. Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I totally agree with what Councillor Mathers has said. However, I'm speaking against the motion because we have been working on this for quite some time. Everyone agrees that, you know, the native bees should be in people. People should have the ability to keep them there. I've also been around long enough to know that when things do go pear-shaped, we can come back and amend the subordinate local law. We may experience some heartache between now and then, but for the sake of getting this done and bedded down, I'll speak against the motion and, just see how we go into the future.
Thanks, Councillor Rutherford. Councillors, any another speaker for the motion? If not, I'll hand back to the mover, Councillor Mathers, to wrap up debate. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor, but I think we've
wrapped it up.
Yes, said what
okay,
needs to be said.
Councillors, do you wish to call for a division? No. Okay. I'll put the vote. Those in favour? Those opposed? The motion's lost. Thank you. Councillors, now we move on to the original motion, recommendation of the officers. That Council resolves to support the officer's recommendation. Could I have a mover with regards to the officer's recommendation? Councillor Kirkland. Seconded Deputy Mayor Councillor Fisher. Speakers for? Speakers against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Wish to record? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, John. Okay, thank you. Councillors, we now move on to our next agenda item, which is 11.14, 125 Robinson Street, Frenchville Road, trustee lease and building transfer request. Good morning, Justin.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. Good morning, council. 11.14, so today's report for 125 Robinson Street. I guess to recap, that brings us to this report today just really quickly and briefly. The report does obviously have a lot of information, so I won't go through it in the nitty-gritty detail. So if we go back to 2022, this is where this began, where the YWCA actually surrendered the building and the assets that we're speaking to today in their trustee lease.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Rutherford.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I didn't. I will have to declare a
conflict?
conflict of interest.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we state the conflict, councillor?
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Mr Mayor,
No,
this one completely
that's why I always say at the start of the
skipped
meeting, if there
my-
is something that
Yes.
comes up during the course of the meeting, I'm more than happy to accept it at that time.
And I actually thought we were on the grammar school one. Yes, Mr Mayor, I have loaned my trampoline equipment to Extreme Trampoline, who operate from the YWCA, so I will declare a conflict of interest and leave the meeting.
We'll just get that on the minutes, councillor, and on the record, sorry, so we've got that captured.
Is that deferrable or prescribed?
To Extreme Trampoline. Extreme Trampoline Club, who operate from the YWCA premises, or should I say the premises
125 Robinson Street.
at 125 Robinson Street. I'm not sure who's right. Is which a better word than who? Or anyway, and I'll leave the meeting.
Okay, thanks, councillor Rutherford. Councillor May, you're drawn in because...
Yeah, Mr Mayor, so I think this has been put to the table before with the same thing, but I just wanted to, flag it that obviously because of my relationship to Councillor Rutherford, I think we did put it to the table a while ago, but I don't know if we need to put it to the table again or...
Might be best to do it again, I think, councillor, so we'll
Okay.
get that recorded, just to declare the relationship with Councillor Rutherford. And you asked the table to...
Yeah, to consider whether they think I am able to stay and vote on the matter.
Okay.
You can't choose your family, Mr Mayor.
I was like, these. Felt like Santa. Oh.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. Further to, and I think
Councillor Kirkland's comment, whether it's a declarable or...
Yeah, because I've just reopened it up, because it's an application So it's an application or written submission to council for the grant of a licence, permit, registration or approval or consideration of a matter under the Local Government Act, which this is. If made before it or was decided, it becomes a prescribed one. So you are right, it's prescribed. So councillor Rutherford's becomes prescribed. Once that's prescribed, you're prescribed. So yes. Even though we dealt with the matter back in August, and you'll be declarable because it's not a sibling, so forth. You're just a close associate. You got to go.
So we just got to capture all that detail though.
That's
with
prescribed.
It's from declared to prescribed.
Yeah, I'll let her know, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Wickerson then too.
Is declarable and once decided back in...
No, it's better to get it all right. Yeah. Councillor Drew.
Yeah, so back then...
You were voted to... No, you voted to stay.
Oh, was it? Yeah, so Councillor... Do you need to read that out? We'll pick it up.
You're in the bin?
We did
Okay, and Councillor Wickerson's right. Do we need to record that though, Councillor Wickerson?
And then
And change declarable at the top with Rutherford.
that Councillor Wickerson can stay in the meeting and no conditions and vote on the matter.
True. Can you read Councillor Rutherford's thing? Save battery.
Justin.
All right, we're back.
Thank you.
So, yes, through the chair, and to continue on, I guess, as I was mentioning, 2022, the Y obviously surrendered the building, its assets and the lease that goes with that back to council. Shortly after that, we obviously went into an open tender process, and to that end, we saw no suitable applications or tenders received. Now, I guess that brought us to the previous report to this, where officers brought back, a subsequent report that really highlighted and identified some statutory maintenance with this building that we needed to address and come up with a plan to manage, whilst council continued, obviously, in that capacity to be the owner and maintainer of that asset. Since that time, we have now received a new submission from who is the existing trustee permit holder, Rockhampton Boxing and Sports Promotion Group Incorporated. They are an organisation that have actually been situated within this building well before the Y surrendered the lease and its assets to council. So for around 5 years, they've been operating as a bit of a, I'll use this word loosely, a bit of a facility manager and coordinator for the Y. And then since the surrender, they've been the permit holder for council to maintain that asset within the community and make sure it continues to service its purpose. So with that, whilst we started putting a plan in place to, I guess, execute some of the statutory maintenance, And on that topic, what we have committed and we have started, and I'll talk to how that looks in the recommendations, we've actually committed $68,000 of that previous $182,000 worth of work we identified. So within the recommendations, you'll note that in that first officer's recommendation, we're continuing with that, considering that has been committed. So the Rockhampton Boxing and Sports Promotion have essentially approached officers and council with a submission post-tender to say they would like to take on the role consistent with what was in the tender package, meaning that they want to improve the existing use and strengthen its capacity for multi-use within the region. They want to propose they've proposed a capital investment strategy as the proposed owners. All facility use centres around community benefit. So these were the criteria, I guess, we set to set up that new ownership and management model for the facilities. And finally, an organisational capacity to own and manage the facility. So through their proposal, they've obviously spoken and delivered some financial information to support that piece. So if I'll move through now to the recommendations. You will find in the detail that there is 4 options that officers have put forward. I'll speak to just briefly option number 1, which is officers' recommendation, and that looks to support their proposal. So officers have assessed that, that submission. We've considered their existing performance and I guess their value of, across the region in terms of their programs and support to the community, and really recognise that as a demonstrated effort to commit to what their proposal is, I guess, packaged up for us to consider today. So with that, the asset and the ownership of that recommendation would be that council support the gifting of the building and all the assets retained within that 125 Robinson Street, and that is referred to in the attachment, what those assets will be. Once that transfer occurs, subject to approval, they will then take on the future management and maintenance of that dwelling financially and physically. And then I guess not to go into the detail, but to go back to our statutory maintenance we spoke about, we are also in this option referring whatever's left to be done back to them as the prospective owner and maintainer of the building. So that said, the tenure would then look to consider a 10-year period of time so that they've got that security in their investment and that financial commitment to the dwelling and obviously that facility. That 10 years does speak beyond what is our standard leasing period that we consider of 6 years, but considering the significant investment, time spent, even their in-kind sponsorship and improvements that they've done, which I spoke to within the report, which is just shy of $50,000 that they've contributed to that building in their current capacity to improve it. That 10-year window is something they feel that they can continue to obviously see that return through their own programs and obviously for the community. And I think finally that they were probably the key points within that option that we put forward. Everything else is reasonably consistent with what you see in other tenure and leasing renewal matters. So I'll pull up there, I guess, if there's anything glaring or specific within the report or any other questions we can work through. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Justin. This one's been a while in the making, but again, thank you for the work bringing it to the table today. Got a number of lights on, so we'll go around the table for some questions. Councillor Kirkland had her first, Councillor Fisher, and then Councillor Wickerson. Thank you, Councillor Kirkland.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So thanks, Justin. Very excited to see this finally come to the table. We're all familiar with the great work that RBSP are doing and the actual footprint itself, the significant contribution to facilitating other community-based programs is great. So very excited, and I see what you've said in your commentary just now. Your option 1 is actually coming from the club themselves, that's their preferred movement. In your discussions with the club, I'm taking it that you have talked to them about their capacity to pay that $114,000 worth of statutory maintenance. And you're satisfied that they have the capacity to do that either through getting grants and that sort of thing moving forward?
Yes, through the Chair, Councillor Kirkland are correct. So I think one thing I probably didn't mention, and it's a good point, their existing capacity as a permit holder has been significantly restricting their ability to secure grants And non-for-profit community organisations do rely on that revenue stream to, deliver improvements, to deliver community projects, and obviously invest to those assets. So without this formal tenure, they've been restricted on getting that, and that is what their submission has really been founded on, is that they will commit all future grants to, that statutory moment in the first statutory maintenance, as a priority. So that will be their first, commitment financially to the building, is to deliver on that work we will hand over to them. And then obviously through their financial model, they will account for obviously that ongoing maintenance and management of the facility. So yes, that's
really good, really good. And through Mr. Mayor, the second question that I have is there a time delivery constraint on them getting that statutory maintenance done?
Through the chair, yes. So I'll just go back to that section of the report.
It is in there? I missed it.
No, sorry, it may not have been very clear, and I do apologise. So in their capital development submission, there's a big table there, which is a capital and maintenance upgrades that focuses on 2-year windows. So a condition of this tenure would be that they resubmit their capital maintenance and investment plan to consider that statutory maintenance. So yes, it would be conditioned that goes in within the first, I think, was it the first 2 or 4 or 6 years of that plan they need to deliver on.
Perfect, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, just finally, are there any risks to the other users whilst that is to happen? I'm assuming no, because they're all still there now, so.
Yes, through the chair, that is something that we'd have to manage, operationally day in and day out. If there was any displacencies through that work, working with facilities and through that capital, item that we've been looking at, the things like what we've committed at the moment, we're doing the vermin proofing, so it has no impact on the existing use. It all happens around the surrounds. There might be some roof repairs and some issues internally that might move. So down the back in the hall area, there's a dance studio essentially. So we might need to work with those groups, and myself as officers and Jack working in the sports and rec space. If there was any displacency or that work moved them on, we would work with them to try and find other solutions to offset that for that period of time.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. What a great outcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Kirkland. Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Wickerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the divisional councillor and seen this, quite, sort of impressive building just sit there for so long, I have got to commend you and all the team for the work that you've done, because we actually see a council asset that looks like it's got a secure future. So I would like to, on behalf of the community around, commend you for this work. I know it hasn't been easy and it's been sprayed with potholes, but what you've come up with, I think, is a really good asset for the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And through the chair, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I guess that echoes not just through myself. There's a few different sections. You've got assets, you've got the broader communities team that have really put their heads together to try and come up with these solutions. So it's certainly a team effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Wickerson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Justin. We've all had inspections over there, and the lead for Rockhampton Boxing is certainly very passionate about it. And they're doing work elsewhere too. I know they're doing a boxing program in Mount Morgan, and we often talk about youth crime and what are we going to do about it. Well, this is one thing, even though it's probably a suite of things that might be able to help 1 or 2 or 50 kids, get on the right path. So that's fantastic. So absolutely support this. With the risk that Councillor Kirkland talked about, so once we assign the building over to Rockhampton Boxing, if there were an issue, I can't imagine what that might be, the kitchen ceiling falls down, whatever, who bears that risk? Is that council, or is that squarely with the new owner of the building?
Through the chair, it certainly would go to the new owner. So all the conditions of, option 1 is that those assets and everything in terms of their current status goes to the Rockhampton Boxing and Sports Promotion Group. And from that point, they will be responsible for all maintenance, whether it's existing or defects that are previously known. That will be a part of that asset transfer contract. So Kelly and the property insurance team will manage, that component of it. However, once that handover date is set and signed, it becomes their asset to maintain and own and manage, correct?
Okay, thank you. And the next question is that the 2 years that they've nominated that they'll get that stat work done, does that comply with, I imagine they're Queensland state regulations or
Yes, through the
those
chair.
lines?
Yes, through the chair. One of the conditions I think I did allude to in, it might be the commentary, is that the conditions of the leasing will make sure that all their statutory maintenance and their, I guess, ongoing maintenance, beyond the years, there's obviously going to be a maintenance program they're going to have to establish for this building. It's going to have to be compliant with the relative codes and building codes. So I haven't gone down into that detail, but absolutely that will be a condition that all work is compliant with those codes. So.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm too that the work that we've started already will continue to finish that suite of works that we've started? Or does that, if we're halfway through a ramp or something, does that then all go over to the new, or what we've started will finish?
Yes, so through the chair once again, so this in the report, and again, I know it went all over the shop a little bit at times, there was a bit of detail to it. So the statutory maintenance completed. So what that refers to is we've got vermin screens, we've got the front entry ceiling, we've got some kitchen repairs, and we've got an all-ability ramp design. And finally some fire panel upgrades. So that body of work will be completed in full. So the designs for the ramp, for example, we'll do the designs and we'll hand them over, and then the new owner, if endorsed, will deliver that piece of work. So the fire panel upgrades, that'll be done to whatever that scope is, and I apologise, I don't have the scope of each item. Facilities are managing that through to completion, and that is the total cost of that work. So anything. And I guess what we will do as a part of that transfer is we'll give them a bit of a report as to what work's been completed and what formally goes over to them as a part of that.
Okay, thank you, Justin. And so one final one. Highly unlikely, but if Rockhampton Boxing were to not succeed in their ambitions for it, does the building automatically come back to council, or are they responsible then to find a new owner?
Through the chair, I think consistent with a lot of the land acts, and property insurance will speak to the detail a little bit more on this, but the way our tenure is structured, it is a default that if they were to surrender or default or anything like that, or walk away under those conditions of the Land Act, we do naturally inherit whatever's within that lot. However, similar to some of the other community organisations we've witnessed over the last 12, 18 months, we've seen those groups take the initiative to try and find prospective owners. So we try to work with them case by case to say that if they were, for whatever reason, deciding that this isn't for them, or there's another scenario triggering that, they can look to try and find another party to take on that asset through council's support, obviously. So, under the conditions, the lease will always be structured that they walk away, we will inherit it.
Right. Okay, thanks Councillor Wickerson. Look, I'm happy to move, and Deputy Mayor second. No further questions. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Can I invite the other councillors back in to the meeting, please? Thanks very much for that report, Justin. It's a really significant amount of work that's gone in the background from the team to bring us to that point, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, I'm going to adjourn the meeting now and look to resume at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to finish the part 2 of today's meeting. We'll now break for lunch and come back at 1 o'clock for our briefing session. So can I have a mover and I'm happy to move. Seconded Councillor Fisher. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, and we'll now close the meeting. We'll
Taking the good with the ups and downs.